Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is a blown up Slant 6. Now I'm confident those words will sound like absolute nonsense to some of you, because legend has it that the Slant 6 cannot be killed by conventional weaponry. But I assure you, it is possible. In fact, I personally have sent a rod through the side of a Slant 6 in the past. That was due to using like half a can of ether trying to start it, but that's another story altogether. This is the 225 Slant 6 I removed from Dylan Start Sport. What I actually need to accomplish is breaking down the front suspension, cleaning the K-frame, and getting ready to assemble all this with the shiny new good parts. But first, I need to get this Slant 6 out of the way. And since it was obviously messed up, I want to find out what was wrong with it. Now when you get a car that you don't know anything about, and you see this sitting on the front seat, that might be a bit of a clue, but I'm not banking on that being the issue just yet. As a quick aside, I have started cleaning in here. It's pretty gross. I'm going to have to remove all of the engine wiring, and that's actually going to get custom made by hand. That'll be really interesting, and definitely a future video. Now the remains of this engine will be going in my collection. There's actually a good chance I'll use this exhaust manifold to build my turbo manifold for the Turbo Slant project. But there are also some odds and ends that I might need for the 62 Lancer project I'm working on now. If you haven't seen that yet, you'll be seeing more about it in the near future. All right, let's get after it. I'm just going to start stripping stuff off till we can actually see an engine under there, and we'll figure it out. Fine, go down there. And this engine definitely won't be going back together, so I'm not going to worry about bagging and tagging hardware. Oh, what a horrible mess. There you go. There's a complete Slant 6 power steering assembly. Not that I need or want such a thing. Get in there. Random emissions doodads. I think it's time for breakfast. Would you believe me if I told you this thing leaked some oil? I just remembered I didn't I did not open the block drain. I guess I didn't need to worry about the clamps. That's really fun. If you want to hear the horrible sounds this engine made, you can go back and watch the first video when I got Dylan Start Sport running. There's actually a whole playlist for this car on my channel. This will only be the third video in the series, but there will be a lot more coming. Of course, this car is getting a Magnum based 408 stroker, a TKX 5-speed, a Dana 60 rear axle, and all kinds of other nice, fancy, upgrade, modification, doodad type things. Would you let go? Thank you. Yeah, You know, the Slant 6 is an extremely easy engine to work on. The most annoying thing to me is that all the ignition stuff is down here where you can't reach it. Conversely, Slant 6 starter has to be the easiest starter to do in the world. That Lancer I mentioned earlier happens to need a coil wire. We'll probably borrow the one off this. Actually, we might borrow all of the wires and the cap and rotor. We'll save the ground strap for future batches. But this is kind of annoying actually. There's the later electrically assisted choke module thingy. I don't actually know how these work at all. Random bracket. Random return spring. The good news is, if I miss the bucket of parts, it'll only hit the demon. That one bolt is smaller. Chrysler. You know, this car sat for a long time. The oil filter's actually dated, and I think it says 8/18/2006. It had run more recently than that. There we go. Radio noise capacitor thingy. The wire ripped, of course. Oh. broken PCV valve. Let's pull the plugs out. We may just be able to see some evidence of bad stuff on these. Well, it's super sooty. Okay. Yeah, it might have been running a little rich. That one's clean. That one is not as clean, but not bad. You know, I just replaced the clip on this thing. Sooty again. And that one, the tube came loose. Super sooty. Due to the unique design of the Slant 6 intake manifold, I'm not surprised to see inconsistent coloring here. But it's interesting, all of the long runners were super rich, and the middle two short runners were fine-ish. These earlier heads use a spark plug tube like that. Kind of a pain to work with. And you're not supposed to leave the washers on the spark plug if you've got those tubes. You used to be able to buy plugs without washers, but those pretty much don't exist anymore. Time to remove the world's easiest starter. Well, that doesn't work. You know, okay. You'd think I'd know that. Really? Can't even fit a ratcheting wrench. That is an 11/16 nut. Starter hardware is supposed to be 5/8. Okay. Need starter bolts all the time. Transmission bolts too. There's a really good chance this bolt will break. Wow, it didn't. Because California, I guess. I did lose it though. Come back! Why did you do that? Let's pull the valve cover. It's only like 10:30 in the morning. I'm already getting very annoyed. Not the worst I've seen. I like a lot. Yeah. That all seems fine. That one might be a little loose. Not bad though. It was definitely due for a valve set anyway. I'm not seeing any that are like super loose and horrible. So I don't think it was a cam and lifter problem. Again, there's some that are a bit loose probably, but not bad. We'll pull the manifolds next and then we'll get the head off. I forgot the coil was weird on this thing. So I guess we don't have a coil wire. You might have noticed this sticking out of the crank. Slant 6s of this era didn't have a harmonic balancer bolt at all. Later ones did, but I'm not quite sure why that's there. And obviously it's a little long. Removing the manifolds on the Slant is kind of annoying. That one's like a locking nut, and it's on backwards. It should be easier on the ground here than it is in the car. So this has been apart before. Whoops. Oh, don't do that. Some of these are a little stubborn. They're the factory spreaders that clamp the manifolds down. Those allow them to move somewhat as they heat and cool. Some of these are really tight for some reason. Anyway, the really annoying part is the ones underneath. Oh. Okay, well there's one nut missing. Some of them are extra. Ow! That was cool. I jammed my finger between the manifold and the socket. This one here is like almost impossible to get at. No. I guess might need the double wobble for that. Nope. Nope. Never. Almost. Jeez. Oh, okay. You know, I probably could have sprayed all these first, but California, everything's been going so well. Yes! Broke one. Awesome. I'm not having a good time. When I was a lot younger, I used to play with Slant 6s a lot. And one thing that always annoyed me was those bolts on the sides of the connected sections of the manifolds. I don't know how I ever got those without like nice tools, but I did. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. With all of that really annoying hardware removed, the kickdown off, and the dipstick loose, manifolds will come off. Ah, easy. Nice. All right, we're getting there. Here's a closer look at those goofy spreaders. They clamp down between the two manifolds and allow them to move a little bit. I don't see anything horrible yet, except for a bunch of oil in all of these ports. And small wonder, because like every single valve seal is dry rotten and broken into pieces. No horrible bent push rods like that convertible Valiant rocket. Everything looks really good. So we'll pull the valve gear and keep going. Now, with these shaft rockers, you want to gradually loosen all these bolts and allow it to come up bit by bit instead of like fully removing this end to end. The shaft could bend, and we don't want that. I actually do have not only a turbo slant, but a performance naturally aspirated slant build coming in the future. And that one will be based on a later hydraulic cam engine, so I might need these for that. Notice these hold downs are similar to the small ones on big blocks, but they don't have the little tangs on the side. There we go. The valve cover makes a great storage place for top end parts. Now again, I'm not reusing this engine, at least as it was, but even if I was, I never put push rods back in order, especially if the rockers are adjustable. You need the lifters to go back in their homes, but the push rods, I don't think so. Let's break the head loose. And I'm gonna cut the bypass hose because I refuse to fight that thing. Did you know that looking at the bypass hose is the easiest way to tell a 170 and a 225 apart? It's either that long, as it is on this engine, a 225, or it's like that long on the 170 short deck engine. Now I would be lying if I told you I'd never removed head bolts with an impact. I've never final torqued head bolts with an impact, but I sure have removed them with one. So far the torque has been pretty consistent. A little tighter on that one. Did I mention that this is a horrible mess and I barely have any room to work? Welcome to it. You get yourself a good sized shop with what you think at first is all the space in the world, then you fill it immediately. If you've done this a few times, you know exactly what this smells like. I don't know about you, but I reuse factory head bolts all the time. These look great. Nothing wrong there. Oh, the head's actually loose. Sometimes you gotta smack them with a hammer. Oh, I forgot. I didn't have to drain the coolant out of this because the block drain was missing out of it for decades, so I guess we're good to go. That is a big, heavy cylinder head. Here's a look at the head gasket. There are some dark spots here, but there's no obvious damage. This is a steel shim. I mean, if it were really bad, there would be like a break, a burn spot, something like that. It's all intact. Looks pretty good, so if any combustion was getting out around that, it was probably minimal. There is some staining here, but then there's a nice shiny line there, so yeah, this looks okay. I don't really see any evidence here either. So I think the head gasket thing was wishful thinking. I don't know why that one head bolt hole ended up full of oil. It's really interesting. And here's a look at the cylinder head. Again, I see decent circles around every chamber, so I don't see any obvious blow spots where combustion or coolant were being exchanged or anything like that. Now there's some pretty serious buildup in here. Admire the shiny spots around several of these intake valves. That's from oil coming through bad seals. And there's a really good one. That one's mostly dry. I see no smoking guns here. Everything looks fine. I'm sure this head is a good candidate for future reuse with a set of seals and a cleanup job. So now I'm turning my attention to the bottom end of this engine. There was definitely a horrible mechanical noise, and I'd like to find what that is. So now I'm unhooking the torque converter because there's some noise coming from that when I'm rocking the crank back and forth, and I'm trying to isolate it. I suspect a rod bearing or something like that, but we'll see. Well, I am hearing a light noise in here. Let's see if I can get it on camera. Part of that's the wrench knocking around, of course, but the weird part is it seems to make a little clunk every time I stop moving the crank. It's weird. I can't really pinpoint it to one piston, but while I was scrutinizing this thing, I found something else cool. Look at the number 2 piston. There's like a hole in it. And when I say hole, it doesn't actually look like it goes anywhere. It's just sort of a dip. Yeah, that's really weird. And what's even weirder is there are actually little dimples kind of all around the outside here. Very strange. I'll be interested to see what that one looks like around the rings. None of the other pistons seem to look like that. They all look fine. I'm gonna get the 904 dropped off the back of it, and then we'll lift this thing up off the K-frame, drop the pan, and see what's going on in there. The little doodads coming out of this that will not be reused, like these transmission mount bolts and their little spacer things, pure gold. I need this kind of stuff all the time. Something like that. Yay. I left the guard on because I can't access the bolts. There we go. Oh, I bent it. Yeah, well. Oh man, I bent the flex plate too. I only have like 6 more of those for Slant 6s. That thing is greasy. It went into gear and moved fine though, so as far as I know, it's good. Now I would have drained that thing, but they don't have a drain plug and I didn't feel like dropping the pan and making that horrible mess. I'll definitely regret that eventually. There's another piece of solid Mopar gold, around here anyway. Factory flex plate and torque converter bolts. A whole matching set put in a bag and added to the collection. Put it in there. I know exactly what to do with this. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. You ever regret helping someone fix their car before? Really? Really? I guess removing the engine mount bolts is too much to ask. Oh, come on. You know. Okay. Woo! PB wins again. Whoop. Wrong thing. Easy. Yeah. Oh, come on. One of the engine mounts might have been kind of bad. What is that even? Oh yeah, several people noticed that the lights dim every time I use this thing. I wouldn't worry about that. You know, when I moved in like 2 years ago, these concrete floors were essentially brand new. Never mechanicked on. Yeah. Well, there we go. The slant's off the K-frame, so that's cool. I can start getting after that. But let's drop the pan off this thing and see what horrors await. I definitely drained this, right? Definitely. Oh, I missed one bolt. mostly drained. Of course, it's a Slant 6, so everything sits crooked. It's definitely a quad ripping up and down the street right now. If you know anything about these engines, you know this is the earlier, much beefier crank. Look at that counterweight. Yeah, wow. Everything's kind of oily and grubby in here. Weird, I know, but I'm not really seeing any horrible chunks. Sometime today. Alright, that one popped right out. Of course, that's our messed up guy on number 2. Doing this while it's dangling is super safe, by the way. Oh, come on! What is wrong with this piston? Oh, that's what's wrong with this piston. Well, here's number 2 out of the hole. Look at all the like divots and stuff in it. It's really cool. Anyway, remember that like ding? It's actually cracked. And it pinched both rings there, so they broke in the same spot. There you go. Dude, this is awesome. It is actually fully cracked, like across the top. Doesn't seem to continue down the skirt, but it is also more cracked over here. Look at that. It's harder to see in all that muck, but there's actually a third crack right there. That is amazing. Yeah, these rings actually, sprung out when I popped the piston out. That was down in its groove, but it pretty obviously wasn't contacting the cylinder wall, and muck has just been running by it. That is really cool, actually. It's bad, and horrible, but it's really cool. Yeah, so I guess we won't be reusing this one. Both the rod bearings I've seen so far look like that. You can see the bits of metal kind of embedded in the surface. Really interesting. The crank journals look fine so far, so don't really know where that's from. I also don't know what the original sin is here. Like, what did that to that piston? I don't know. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. I just don't know how only one ends up looking this way either. For illustrative purposes, I took this thing out to the wire wheel. Now you can kind of see that pattern a little bit better. Look at those dips. Look at the shape of that thing. And there's the big one. Okay, I think I figured this failure out. It's really neat. Note the wrist pin. Note where it lives. It's centered in its little hole. Look at this one. Now this is important. There's no missing material. It is not centered where it's supposed to be. There's nothing there. It's not like it wallered the piston out. That's where it was put by the manufacturer. I think that must have put some weird force on this piston against the wall and led to this. I don't know if you could see it, but there was also material jammed into the rings. Well, there's where it came from. There's some horrible pits on both front and rear of this bore. You can see the oil there that was washed all the way down the hole, that the rings did not scrape off when they came up. So that pattern's still there. Pretty cool. And yeah, just generally scraped and beaten to crap. Almost cooler though, I'm not sure that was the noise. The rod was pretty tight. Maybe it was that pin moving around there, but I can't really move it by hand. So I guess I'll pull the rest of the pistons and we'll see if there's anything else cool to see. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a casting problem instead of a drilling machining problem. This is number 4, and well, it might actually have one little pit in it too, but it's nothing like number 2 was. Sure, it's scuffed, but yeah, mostly like fine-ish. Oh, interesting note also, the rod cap fell right off on number 2, like, hot dog in a hallway type situation. This one was actually tight. Of course, number 3 won't come out. Someone kind of put a chain in the way. I think I might have found the noise though. And if you know Slant 6s, you've probably been yelling this at your screen the whole time because it's a well-known issue. There's the timing chain. Yeah, okay. I have a question. Why is there water above this main bolt? Is that into a coolant jacket? Huh. noise to me. Well, okay. I've got all the caps off and the pistons that I could get out, and there are no knockers here. I mean, there's wear and there's metal in there, but not that bad. Now the number 2 rod bearing, yeah, it's a bit worn, kind of ugly. And again, this cap just like falls off. There's something else interesting here too. There's the notch for the bearing tang. Why does it have another one? I don't think any of the others have that. No, they just have one. But this guy has 2. That is really strange. Top half of the shell, pretty similar. Worn, not the worst. Don't worry about the fact that all these components are in a pile of kitty litter. Yeah, it's not going back together. It's fine. Here's what I was talking about with the cap. This one just like hangs out on there. There's no springy to it, you know? It's not snug on the bolt. It's so weird. It was definitely installed this way, you know, you can tell. And the bearing shells are lined up. The machine surface is happy. I don't know. That's weird. Never seen that before. I've seen one machined backwards, but I've never seen that before. I'm basically out of time here, and I don't want to pull the crank out yet anyway. I've made a big enough mess, you know. I'm gonna have to store all this stuff for the next 20 years. But I did pull one main cap just to look, and that bearing is fine, let's say. Some debris's been through it, so that's not great. Are these bolt holes open into water passages? Is that a thing? It's a new one to me, but if you're familiar with this, let me know in the comments. With everything out, there is zero noise. Not from the crank, not from the timing set. The crank doesn't move in and out, so the thrust surfaces are fine. I don't know. Maybe the timing wasn't the noise. Or maybe it doesn't make noise because there are no valve train components, so there's no pressure on the cam, pushing it backwards, forwards. Cylinder 2 here is a total horror show, but I don't really see anything here that makes that rattling noise I was hearing. Either way, this thing was not going to go another 100,000 miles. It was obviously toast, and I'm glad we took it out. It's definitely going to be like 20 times the car with this 408 stroker under the hood, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I'm sure you are too. Of course, my next project will be breaking down this horrible greasy mess and getting this sucker ready to accept that 408 stroker. That'll involve cutting this perch down for the Schumacher conversion kit and other stuff. And we'll definitely be seeing all of that on future installments of the Dart Sport project here. Until then, thank you very much for watching. And remember, with great stupidity comes very little responsibility.